In this video, I'm going to do a sample rough design as you have to do for the rough design milestone. So just a little overview to show you how you do a rough design. Our client is going to be the Cross Bakehouse, a local bakery. They make excellent breads. And so you can see they have this Facebook page right here where they post today's breads, like so. And what we're going to be focusing on is, scroll down here. If you see, after they post the breads, then people will start ordering or reserving breads. So I like 2 cheddar pepper biscuits and that, and then they say, okay, got it. We'll reserve that for you because they might run out. They do run out most of the time. And so here's another one. So let's say they come to you and they're like, we would like, people to have an app where they can reserve bread for that day and just automate this a little bit. So how do you do that? The main thing they say it has to be a mobile app. So it could be either a website that is mobile ready or a native web application. And, for the rough design, we really don't care for now. I think we'll figure it out. So you start by drawing the screen. So this is your phone right here. And we say, well, the main thing you want to do is reserve bread. So let's say it's going to look something like this. I'll say, breads or something for today at the top. And this is going to be their bread reservation or ordering page. So we're going to call it, the order breads page. So this is very important. When you do this, you want to name every page. That name will be very useful once you start programming, because that's going to be, the ordered breads view or the ordered breads page, depending on what platform you're doing it. And and it also helps you just talk about it. So we give it a name and we say, well, how is it going to look? Well, pretty obviously it's going to just have a list of breads and sourdough. Sourdough and I don't know, your baguettes. I don't know how to spell baguette. That's probably wrong. And so it's going to have a list of breads. And then, the user is going to need to order them. Now we could put a checkbox there, but then you can only order one. And we saw that one person was ordering like 2. So we're going to need a drop-down box. Right, I'm going to say 0 that. And so when you hit that, it's a drop-down box. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How much bread do you want? So it'll just standard drop-down box for each one. And so the user will come here, see the breads, change the numbers, maybe put a 2 here, a 1 here, and then he's done. He's probably going to need also a submit button to submit that. So you see, this is what the rough design helps you think about, the whole workflow. So the user is going to submit this order, and then what happens? So many things can happen. You can, email him. You could go to a new page. You could have a popover here. Let's say for now that we're just going to say when he hits submit, there's going to be a popover. So that's a little window that appears up here. I'm not putting it there because it makes it illegible. And it just says, I don't know, I'll say a message that says, we got your order, it's okay. And then what happens? The popover goes away. And we'll say, well, after that, you go back to this same page with these things filled out. So you think about that, that might not be the greatest design because the user, after the popover goes over, the user doesn't know if his order is there. So I don't know, maybe you want to have something else that tells him, this order has been submitted. Or maybe you want to have a different page, etc. So this is one of the goals of the rough design is to help you think through the various, the design. How many pages do you want and how's the workflow going to go? So I'm not going to solve this problem now. I'm just going to leave you with that question. Another question, again, that this raises is, okay, well, so this is the user, but what happens for the baker? The bakers, how does he get that list? So yeah, I submit this, that's fine as the user, but how does the baker get a list? So typically you will want, obviously the baker to also use the same app. Maybe he uses the same app, but with a login. So there's a secret login where he can log in, and then he can see, of the ciabatta, how many people have ordered it. Of the sourdough, how many people have reserved it, etc. Okay, so again, that's interesting, and it raises just more questions, right? So if this is true, then, I mean, can he set a limit? Say, what if, he can only bake 50 sourdoughs, and now he's got, I don't know, 51 reserved. Should the app know? So maybe the baker can go in the morning and set, I'm going to bake 50 sourdoughs, and then the app knows there are only 50 that can be reserved. So after 50, you are going to just, gray out the sourdough, say there's no more. So perfectly fine solution. So all those decisions you need to write. So I'm not going to do that. I'm just talking about it, but you need to write the flow or the workflow. So you have to describe what happens. What happens when the user submits the button? What happens when you run out of bread? And you have to describe all the windows that the baker sees, which might be more than just this one. So here we have one, but like I said, if you want the baker to enter stuff, then this would be, we would call this the orders page. And then we might have one for, today's baking. Today's baking, or maybe today's plan. And that one would, again, still be a list of breads, but then it's different because now the baker is entering, how many he's going to bake for that day. And then your app remembers that and grays out all the ones that are already sold out. So you see it gets complicated, and I'm not writing all this down here, but you should. So when you do your rough design milestone, you have the screens, hopefully better than mine, definitely better than mine, and also the text describing, how these things work together. The goal of the rough design is just to try out different ways of doing the same app. So the one I just showed you is sort of the most basic one that you can do with built-in widgets, the easiest way, laziest way to go about it. Let's try to be a little more creative. So one thing you can do is, we can go back to the web page, and you notice that, they have this very nice board, and then they post that. So maybe our interface could look like this, right? What we're doing is saying is now, instead of our interface just being a drop-down list of names, maybe it looks like a blackboard. So we make it, this is going to look very similar, but in the rough design, but in reality, of course, the idea is that this will look a lot like the blackboard as much as we can get it. You can use custom fonts and, a black background, and I will list the bread. So we're just echoing that today's breads, and ciabatta and sourdough. So now that would be a little bit more fun for the user to use. Well, now we can't have the drop down there because it's just not going to look right. So we can say, well, the user clicks on that. So we can say when the user clicks or touches a particular bread, then there's a pop-up, and it'll say, we'll have to say sourdough, if the user clicked on sourdough. so he knows which one, and then you get the little drop down. You say, count or how many you want to order, and then you'll have again the drop down and submit or okay and cancel the usual. It's cancel on okay. Put him the wrong way, but something like that. So you have this nice interface. It looks a little bit prettier using an order, and now because of this, now though you have the problem of when he hits cancel or okay, what does he do? He probably goes back to here to the same page, and so he lost the count. So how does he know that he ordered 3 sourdoughs? You're probably gonna need an order page. So typically, you'll have the menu here, and so under the menu, you can, the menu could be, typically you'll have the menu as its own screen. So the menu will say today's breads, my order. So we call this the main menu. So that's my menu, and so when I click my order, then I go to my order page. Order page, which then you draw out is a new page, which shows my order, and it'll just show, so this will be kind of like a shopping cart, right? So it'll have, sourdough. I have order 3, and then there'll be, the delete button. And then maybe this is under a drop down, so I can change my count. So this is like a typical shopping cart, and you can delete the one I order, or you can change the number. And then you can use the menu system to go back to today's breads and order more. So that's a different way of doing it. It's a little nicer. So, when the user starts off, the idea is that this is going to be nicer. Obviously, this page, getting it to look like the board is going to be harder. It's going to be more programming, but that's fine. You're a developer. You like programming, right? So another slightly different design, which is probably going to be more appealing to people. Okay, so those 2 previous apps were focused on people that are already customers of the Cross Bakehouse, and so it just makes them easier for current customers to order breads. But let's say instead we want our app to get new customers, right? So people just download the app because it has got a nice feature, or they stumble upon the website, and we want to tell them about the breads and just get them to buy. So increase customers. So how do we do that? It's bread, man. It's awesome. So people like bread, and one of the problems is in our previous 2 apps, you just had the name of the breads. So the first thing you could do is, again, I just drew a screen here. We could have, instead of just the name of the bread, we could have photos of the various breads. And I don't know how to draw breads. These are like breadsticks, I'm guessing, and sort of bowl-ish type of a bread. So you could do that. You could just have photos of the bread. So a big list of delicious breads and muffins. I think they sell muffins too. And then when the user hits on one, so this would be, the bread list now. And we have to name it. And when the user clicks on one, he'll go to a detail page on that. So I'm going to call it the bread detail page. And that page will have the actual, bread itself, maybe the name, some awesome description of, how it was made and what ingredients and how healthy it is for you and how awesome it tastes, etc. And then the buy button, or order or something. Buy button there. This buy button then would take you to the page. Maybe this is a pop-up, or maybe there's a page. I'm gonna go with a pop-up here, which like before just tells you, you'll have the again, we're gonna need the photo again. Well, if it's a pop-up, we probably don't need the photo. We just need the drop down saying how many you want to buy. Cancel and OK. So that's a very different way of doing the whole thing. You know, looks very different. It functions pretty much the same, but it displays them. You know, it gives you a lot more description. We have photos. We can, you know, entice people to buy today's breads. Again, we're gonna have the issue of what's my order. So we will probably solve it the usual way, like we did before with a menu. So the menu, like the other one, I'm not going to draw it, but maybe like the other one, the menu would have, you know, my order. So I can go to a page that lists my order. My order just maybe it's the same as before, or maybe it's different, etc. So here's another completely different, well, very different way of doing it, or just laying out the same information. Functionally the same, but stylistically different. And you can show this to your client and see which one they might prefer. And as you're doing this, you know, this raises a lot of interesting questions that I haven't really addressed. The issue of today's breads, you know, how do we deal with the list of today's breads? So basically, how does the baker set what are today's breads, and how does this looks different if, say, this one is not available anymore? Do we just not show it? Do we, you know, disable it, etc.? So there are still a lot of unanswered questions that you should answer. Another one is this problem of today, right? So I've ignored this problem so far, but you know, today, what does that mean? When does the day start? And how do I deal with that change of day, right? It could be a little bit tricky if people start ordering a bread and then, well, that was yesterday's bread, you know. Maybe this might not be an issue if you know all the breads disappear by, say, 5 p.m. Then it is not an issue, but depending on how you decide to show the bread, it could be an issue. And which brings us to, you know, you can bring this up to your client and say, well, this is fine, but, you know, let's say now that you have this app, what's to keep me from ordering a bread for Wednesday, right? So maybe instead of doing it daily, maybe the baker could come up with a schedule for the whole week, and then people can order breads, you know, go through the list and say, oh, my favorite bread is not going to be there till Tuesday, so I'm going to order it for Tuesday on Sunday. And then I'll know how to pick it up. So this is something you can do, which would be very hard to do with a Facebook page, but you can bring that to the client and say, hey, would you like to do that? Similarly, you know, you have push notifications. So I mean, an obvious one is, you know, you can push every day, hey, new breads. But also, once a person orders a bread, maybe you want to remind that person to pick it up. So you can have push notifications for that. So lots of interesting things you could do there. And one last one is so wish list. So one of the things this gives you is, you know, once you say you're doing something like the weekly one, and people see the breads, maybe you can see that people are ordering a particular type of bread a lot more than the baker thought, right? So the baker can use if you have a weekly app, the baker can use that to change how much they're going to bake. Or similarly, you can put extra breads in your bread list that are not, you know, being baked for today. But you can just ask the users, hey, would you like, you know, the chocolate cherry bread, which is delicious. And you know, if enough people mark it, then the baker can make it. So that's one of the third things you do is, you know, once you have an app, you're automating a process that was done, you know, by hand or in a different way. You want to explore all the other new things that you can do that you couldn't do before. So these are all things that were really hard to do before, the way with the Facebook page and manually. But now with an app can be done, and maybe you can just draw some screens to show, okay, this is a wish list. It's pretty simple, right? It will just look just like the order page, except it'll have all the breads. But it'll be sort of different. It'll be a different list, but it's not any more programming for you, really. So that's it. For your rough design milestone, what you're gonna do is you're gonna do a bunch, like this. I did 3 here, 3 different ways of implementing the same app. You're gonna do 3 different ways of doing it, and then I want you to remember to name everything, all your pages, and I want you to also describe, which I didn't do in this video, but describe how the app flows, what happens when the user clicks on here and he goes to that, and he clicks on this, then he goes to that page. Pretty easy, but just make sure to write that in English. And that's it. And then for your detail design, all you do is you pick either one of them or, parts from the 3 of them, pick the best parts, and you're going to redo all of it. Instead of just sort of write it out, you're going to use one of the wireframing tools.